Alpha
Look at
King
me.
noticed the little girl cook hide
Stay
her
with me.
bruises. What he
You're
did
gonna be
next
fine.
silenced the town. People in the nearby town whispered about the Alpha King who ruled it, Kale. They said he was strong, fearless, and sometimes cruel, but also capable of seeing things no one else could. Some said he could see the truth hidden in a person's heart, even if that person tried to hide it. Inside the castle, in a narrow, bustling kitchen filled with the smells of bread, roasting meat, and herbs, a young girl moved quickly. Her name was Lyra. She was small, with dark hair tied in a simple braid, and eyes that were sharp, careful, and always watching. She worked silently, chopping, stirring, and carrying trays of food, careful not to spill or make a mistake. But beneath her careful movements she carried a secret. Faint bruises marked her wrists and arms. Some were fresh, some older. She covered them with long sleeves and avoided anyone noticing. She flinched when a pan clanged too close to her elbow, and sometimes she rubbed her wrists when she thought no one was looking. The castle kitchens were alive with noise and movement. Cooks shouted instructions, knives clattered on chopping boards, and smoke from the ovens made the air thick. Yet even in all this chaos, one presence made the air change. Kale, the Alpha King, moved through the castle with a quiet, commanding presence. He wore a dark cloak that brushed the floor, and his eyes were sharp, like ice in the firelight. Even in the great halls filled with guards and courtiers, he could walk without making a sound. That night Kale had come to inspect the evening meal. The kitchen staff stiffened when they saw him, and Lyra froze mid-step. Kale's eyes scanned the kitchen. He noticed every detail, the way the soup had boiled over in one pot, the bread that was slightly too dark, and the little girl who tried to hide behind a table. Lyra thought she had hidden well. She was small, quiet, and the kitchen was crowded, but Kale's gaze found her. It lingered, something in him shifted. It was not anger nor approval, it was curiosity. Lyra felt her heart quicken. She had heard the stories. The Alpha King could be cruel to those who failed him. She tried to pull back, to blend into the shadows, but her movements were small and hesitant. She dropped a spoon, and the clatter made her flinch. Kale's eyes narrowed, but instead of scolding her, he stepped closer. The kitchen seemed to quiet, though the fire crackled and pans hissed. He knelt slightly, lowering his voice so that only she could hear. "You are hiding something," he said. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried authority. "I can see it in your hands, your arms." Lyra's face flushed. She had hoped no one would notice. She swallowed hard and looked away. I'm fine, Your Majesty," she whispered, her voice trembling. Kale didn't speak again. Instead, he left as quietly as he had come. The kitchen staff exhaled, relieved, but Lyra felt a strange sensation in her chest, something she could not name. It was not fear, but a mixture of awe and dread. That night, after the kitchen had emptied and the halls were silent, Kale walked alone to the balcony overlooking the cliffs. The wind whipped around him, tugging at his cloak, and the sea roared far below. He thought about the girl, Lyra. There was something in her that drew his attention. Not just the bruises, not just her smallness, but the way she moved through life as if carrying a weight no one else could see. That weight reminded him of his own burdens. The next morning, Lyra awoke before dawn. She dressed in simple clothes and tied her braid tightly. The bruises on her arms were hidden beneath sleeves, but the memory of Kale's gaze stayed with her. She could not stop thinking about him, about the way he had noticed her without speaking harshly. In the kitchen, she worked silently. The other cooks whispered, stealing glances at her. They had heard the stories of the Alpha King noticing someone, and everyone knew that once Kale's attention fell on a person, life changed. Some were rewarded, some were punished. Lyra tried to ignore the whispers. She focused on the dough, on the soup, on the chopping. But Kale was watching. Later that day, he walked through the castle halls, unseen by most. He paused outside the kitchen door and watched Lyra at work. Her hands moved quickly, expertly, even though her small frame seemed fragile. He noticed the faint marks again. He noticed the way her eyes darted nervously when he was near, and he noticed something else, her strength. She had survived something terrible, and yet she carried on. She did not cry out, she did not beg, she endured. Cale decided to act, not with anger, not with punishment, but with a quiet, subtle gesture. When the lunch tray was ready, he arranged for one of the castle servants to leave it outside Lyra's small room, a tray of warm bread, cheese, and honey, untouched by anyone else. Lyra found it later after the day's work, and her hands trembled. She looked around, expecting someone to be watching, but the corridor was empty. A small note lay on top of the tray: "You are stronger than you know." Lyra could not read the handwriting without feeling her heart race. Someone had seen her. Someone had noticed her pain. And instead of punishment, there was kindness. That night, Lyra could not sleep. She thought about the Alpha King, about his eyes, his voice, and the note. She did not understand why he cared. She had spent her life hiding, fearing attention. Yet this man, who ruled with strength and fear, had shown her something different: protection. The next day, rumors began in the town. People whispered about the girl in the castle who had caught the Alpha King's eye. Some said it was dangerous. Some said it was a blessing. Lyra tried to ignore it. She kept her head down, her sleeves long and her hands steady, but she could not ignore the pull in her chest, the strange sense of being seen. Cale watched her from the shadows again. He was drawn to her resilience, to the way she carried her secret without breaking. He had seen many people in his life: strong warriors, clever nobles, cunning courtiers. But Lyra was different. She was quiet, fragile in appearance, yet fierce in spirit, and he could feel it. Days passed. Small gestures became more frequent: a warm drink left by the hearth, extra firewood stacked near her room, quiet moments when he would pass by and nod, silently acknowledging her presence. Lyra's heart began to soften, though she tried to resist it. She had learned long ago that attention brought danger. One evening, as she carried a tray of food through the hall, she nearly dropped it when Cale stepped from the shadows. "You are tired," he said simply. "Go rest. Your work is enough for one day." Lyra froze. No one had ever spoken to her like that in the castle. She wanted to obey, to run, but her pride made her stay. You are kind, Your Majesty," she whispered. Cale's eyes softened for a brief moment, the hardness of a king melting into something human. "I am not kind," he said quietly, "but I can see what others do not." Lyra could not understand fully, but she felt the truth in his words. Someone had seen her, not the small, quiet cook, but the girl who endured in silence, who hid her pain and carried on. That night, as the castle slept, Cale stood on the balcony again. The wind tugged at his cloak, and the sea roared far below. He thought about Lyra and the faint marks on her arms, and he realized that he could not ignore her. She had survived so much, and yet she still had fire in her spirit. Suddenly, a thought struck him, a warning from deep within. Someone in the castle knew of her past, knew the secret of her bruises, and they would not rest until it was used against her. He clenched his fists. He would protect her no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Lyra lay in her small room, staring at the ceiling. She could not stop thinking about Cale, about the kindness in a man so feared, about the strange pull in her heart. She did not know what the future held, but she sensed that everything was about to change. The night passed with the wind howling around the castle towers. And when dawn broke, the castle was quiet, except for two hearts unknowingly linked by curiosity, attention, and the promise of something neither fully understood. At breakfast, as the kitchen filled with the smells of fresh bread and roasting meat, Lyra felt it again, the gaze of the Alpha King. She tried to focus on her work, but a small voice inside whispered, "He has noticed you, and everything will never be the same." And far above in the great hall, Cale watched, waiting, thinking, and planning. For both of them, the first threads of a bond had begun. Threads that would pull them into a storm of emotion, danger, and truth. And deep in the shadows of the castle, unseen, someone smiled. someone who knew that the Alpha King's attention to the little cook would shake the foundations of Blackspire. The story had only begun. The town below Blackspire Castle was alive with whispers. People murmured about the little cook in the castle who had caught the Alpha King's attention. Some said it was a blessing, others claimed danger. No one knew why Kale, feared by all, had chosen to notice a girl so small, so quiet, so hidden in the kitchen's shadows. Lyra moved carefully through the halls that morning, carrying a basket of bread. Her sleeves were long, hiding the faint bruises on her wrists, but she felt every gaze in the castle. The servants watched her closely, curious and afraid. She kept her head down, not daring to meet anyone's eyes. Kale, however, noticed everything. From his balcony above the great hall, he observed her. Every movement, every glance, every small gesture. He saw how carefully she placed the bread, how she adjusted her sleeves when she thought no one was looking, and how she flinched at sudden noises. But he also saw her strength, her determination to continue despite pain, to serve even when fear sat heavy on her shoulders. The Alpha King's attention made Lyra nervous, but also something new stirred within her, a spark of hope. Perhaps she was not completely invisible. Perhaps someone could see her, not just her small, frightened self, but her courage, her heart. That day, Kale asked her to prepare a special dish for the evening banquet. He did not ask her directly. Instead, a sealed note appeared on the kitchen table. "Prepare what you think will please. I trust your skill." Lyra's hands shook. No one had ever spoken to her like this. The note did not command. It did not order. It trusted. She read it over and over, trying to steady her heart. She wanted to reply, but she did not know how. Instead, she poured herself into her work, choosing ingredients carefully, tasting each dish, and imagining the Alpha King at the banquet, waiting, expecting. As she cooked, the air in the castle seemed heavier. Strange noises echoed in the halls, soft whispers, distant footsteps, doors creaking as though moved by an unseen hand. A chill ran through her. She had heard the rumors of the castle being haunted, of spirits who lingered where dark magic had once fallen. But she had always been told these stories to keep her in line. Now, the tales felt real. Kale watched from the shadowed balcony above the kitchen, sensing her unease. He knew the castle held secrets and dangers that went beyond the ordinary. Shadows shifted where no one should be, and whispers carried warnings meant for him alone. He had spent years protecting his people from curses, from magic that could twist even the strongest mind. And now, he feared that Lyra, the girl he had noticed, could become a target. That evening, the banquet hall filled with nobles, knights, and merchants. The hall gleamed with polished silver and shining candles. The air smelled of roasted meats, spiced wine, and fresh bread. Lyra carried the first dish herself, placing it carefully before the Alpha King. Kale's gaze met hers briefly. A small nod, almost imperceptible, acknowledged her effort. Lyra felt a rush of warmth, though she quickly returned to her duties. She could not let herself be distracted. The eyes of the entire court could turn against her in a single moment. Rumors spread quickly among the nobles. The little cook had prepared the Alpha King's meal personally. Some smiled politely, others whispered, their words sharp and dangerous. The sorceress of the court, a woman with silver hair and eyes like steel, watched with a slow, calculating smile. She had sensed Kale's attention to Lyra and saw an opportunity. She had long sought to manipulate him, and this girl, small and hidden, could be used to weaken his authority. After the banquet, Kale left the hall quietly. He did not speak to the guests. He did not answer their bows. Instead, he walked to the castle gardens, where the night was thick with mist and the scent of blooming night flowers. He thought of Lyra, of her hidden bruises, of the courage he saw beneath her trembling hands. He did not realize he was being followed until a shadow flickered at the edge of the garden. The sorceress stepped from the darkness, her smile sharp, her voice cold. "You notice her, do you not?" she asked, her words almost playful. The little cook with her fragile hands and frightened eyes. She is nothing, Kale, yet you care. Kale's eyes narrowed. I care for those who endure, who carry burdens no one else can see, he said calmly. And you would do well to remember your place. The sorceress laughed softly, a sound like dry leaves. Oh, I know my place, but some burdens are too dangerous. That girl, she will bring trouble. Watch closely and you will see. Kale did not answer further. He knew her warnings were not idle. She had power and she had enemies. But he also knew that Lyra's strength, her courage, was real. She was no ordinary girl. The next morning, Lyra awoke early, the castle quiet except for the faint creak of the stone floors and the distant roar of the sea. She prepared for the day as usual, her hands moving automatically, though her mind was restless. She could not stop thinking about Kale's gaze, his quiet acknowledgement, and the strange kindness he had shown. In the kitchen, she worked faster than usual, trying to finish before the servants and guards noticed her hesitation. But she was not alone. A small figure watched her from the corner of the room. One of the castle's servants, a boy named Joran, leaned against the wall, his eyes curious and nervous. They say the Alpha King has taken notice of you, Joran whispered. People are talking, be careful. The court, it is not kind to those it notices. Lyra's hands froze over the bread. I do not want attention, she said quietly. I only want to do my work. Joran nodded, but his eyes were troubled. Attention finds you whether you want it or not, he said softly. Especially from him. Lyra did not answer. She focused on her work, feeling the weight of his words. That evening, Kale walked through the castle quietly, visiting the kitchen once more. This time he did not hide. Lyra looked up in surprise, her heart racing. He approached her without words, studying her carefully. You are learning, he said finally, his voice low. Your hands, they carry skill now, not just fear. Lyra felt a shiver. She had never heard anyone speak to her like this. Not a lord, not a guard, not even a teacher. I try, your majesty, she whispered. Kale's gaze softened, but only slightly. You endure. That is more than most can do. A sudden noise in the corridor made them both turn. The sorceress had been watching, silent and calculating. She did not move, but her presence was like a shadow, pressing against the walls, her intent clear. Kale's jaw tightened. He had sensed her plots before, but now it was personal. Lyra was involved, whether she knew it or not. Over the following days, Lyra began to notice small signs that someone in the castle wanted to unsettle her. A tray knocked over by an unseen hand. A note slipped into her room, warning her to leave the castle. She knew immediately it was the sorceress. Fear rose in her chest, but she did not give in. She had survived worse, and now she was learning that courage meant standing even when danger was near. Kale, sensing the threat, grew protective. He arranged for extra guards near her quarters, but more importantly, he watched over her quietly. He could feel her fear, and he knew that the sorceress's magic was subtle but dangerous. One night, Kale found Lyra in the hidden gardens, staring at the stars. Her hands trembled not from cold but from worry. He approached, careful not to startle her. You are not alone, he said softly. Whatever comes, I will not let harm reach you. Lyra looked up, eyes wide. For a moment she wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel safe for the first time in her life. I do not know what to do, she whispered. Kale knelt slightly, his eyes level with hers. Do what you have always done. Endure, but do not hide from those who see your strength. That is where true power begins. Lyra's heart raced. She had never heard such words before. They were not commands. They were not orders. They were trust. Suddenly, a shrill scream echoed from the castle halls. Both turned, and the shadows seemed to move unnaturally. A servant ran past, pale and terrified. The sorceress, she is in the castle, the boy cried. Kale's eyes narrowed. He grabbed Lyra's hand gently but firmly. Come, he said. We leave the hall now. Lyra followed, her heart pounding. The castle that had seemed safe, familiar, was suddenly a place of danger and whispers. She realized with a chill that her life was changing. The attention of the Alpha King had brought her out of the shadows, but it had also brought darkness closer. They moved through secret passages, corridors known only to the Alpha King. Kale's presence was steady, unshakable, and it gave Lyra a strange courage. She realized that she could trust him, that he would not let harm reach her, at least, she hoped. As they reached a hidden balcony overlooking the cliffs, Kale stopped. The stormy sea crashed below, lightning flashing across the horizon. He looked at Lyra, his face unreadable but serious. "You have strength," he said, "but soon you will need more. The world sees you now. And not all who see you wish you well." Lyra nodded, her small hands clutching the railing. She did not fully understand, but she knew he was right. Danger was coming and she would have to be brave. Kale's gaze swept the horizon. He could sense the sorceress's magic, the threat she posed, and the challenges that lay ahead. And he knew one thing clearly: he would protect this girl no matter the cost. For Lyra, the night felt alive with fear and possibility. The first threads of courage and trust were weaving in her heart, but she did not yet know how far she would be tested, or how deep her bond with the Alpha King would grow. And somewhere in the shadows of the castle, the sorceress smiled, knowing that the game had only begun. The storm came suddenly, as if the heavens themselves had sensed the danger in Blackspire Castle. Rain lashed against the stone walls, and thunder rolled across the cliffs. The wind howled through the towers, rattling the shutters and carrying whispers of long-forgotten secrets. Lyra stood in the hidden garden, her hair soaked, her hands trembling. The note she had found earlier that day had warned her. "The sorceress comes for you. Be ready." She had not understood the full meaning, but now the castle felt alive with danger. Every shadow seemed to watch her, every sound made her heart race. Kale appeared suddenly from the mist, his cloak whipping in the wind. His eyes, sharp and steady, scanned the surroundings before settling on Lyra. She felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. No one else in the castle would have come for her so quickly. "You must come with me," Kale said, his voice low but firm. "She will not wait, and neither can we." Lyra nodded silently, following him through hidden corridors she had never noticed before. The castle that had once seemed so vast and confusing now felt like a maze of secrets, each step leading them closer to danger. As they moved, Kale explained quietly, "The sorceress is powerful. She can twist shadows and minds, but her greatest weakness is fear. She fears courage that comes from the heart." Lyra shivered. Courage had always seemed like something distant, something she lacked. But now, walking beside Kale, she realized that she had already faced fear countless times, alone, unnoticed, and still surviving. The corridors ended at a hidden chamber beneath the castle. The walls glowed faintly with symbols Kale had traced long ago, protective runes against dark magic. "Here, you will be safe for now," he said, closing the heavy door behind them. Lyra sank to the floor, her shoulders trembling. I don't know if I am strong enough," she whispered. Kale knelt beside her. "You are. You have always been stronger than you know, and soon you will see it too." He left her there briefly, returning with a small bundle. Inside were herbs, warm bread, and a simple cloak. He draped the cloak over her shoulders. "You will need warmth and protection, not just from the storm, but from what comes next." Hours passed, and the storm grew fiercer. Lightning illuminated the castle towers, revealing shadows that seemed to move with purpose. Lyra could not stop thinking about the sorceress, about the whispers in the halls, about the dangers she had never imagined. Yet, Kale's presence beside her gave a strange comfort. "You are ready," Kale said at last, his voice calm, almost gentle. "But I need you to trust me completely. Without trust, courage is fragile. With it, we can face anything." Lyra looked at him, uncertainty in her eyes. "I want to trust you, I do," she said softly, "but I've been alone so long I don't know if I can." Kale reached out, his hand steady, resting near hers. "Then start small. Let me carry some of your burden. You do not have to bear everything alone." They moved again, leaving the safety of the hidden chamber. The storm had made the castle eerily silent, except for the occasional crash of thunder. They ascended a spiral staircase that led to one of the upper towers. Cale's eyes scanned every corner, every shadow. He had fought many enemies, faced countless threats, but this felt different. This was personal. At the top of the tower, a sudden gust of wind nearly knocked Lyra off her feet. She caught herself on the stone wall, heart racing. Cale stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "Steady," he murmured. "Focus. Breathe." The sorceress appeared then, materializing from the shadows. Her silver hair glimmered even in the storm's dim light, and her eyes burned with calculation. She held a staff that seemed to pulse with dark energy, twisting the air around it. "You cannot hide from me," she hissed. "The girl belongs to the shadows. She will bend or break." Cale's stance was calm, but the power in his presence was undeniable. "She belongs to no one but herself," he said, "and I will not let you harm her." Lyra felt fear, yes, but she also felt something new, determination. She had faced pain alone, endured hardships, survived bruises and whispers of doubt. Now she realized that she could act, that she could resist. The sorceress raised her staff, and dark energy shot toward Lyra. Reflexively, Cale stepped in front of her, blocking the attack. The magic slammed against him, sending a shockwave through the tower. Lyra stumbled but held her ground. "You must trust yourself," Cale shouted over the storm. "Your courage is stronger than her magic." Lyra's heart pounded. She clenched her fists, drawing on every ounce of inner strength. She remembered every hardship, every bruise, every moment she had survived alone, and suddenly she acted. With a cry, she pushed forward, placing her hands on the edge of the sorceress's dark energy. It shimmered, twisted, and for a moment faltered. The sorceress hissed in surprise. Cale moved beside her, amplifying her courage with his own power. Together they pushed back the dark magic, forcing it to dissipate into the stormy night. The sorceress stumbled, her staff crackling, her eyes wide with shock. "Impossible," she whispered. She resisted me." Cale's eyes were steady, unwavering. "Strength comes from the heart, not the shadows," he said. The sorceress vanished into the night with a scream, leaving the storm to howl around the tower. Cale turned to Lyra, his face unreadable but his eyes softer than usual. "You see now," he said quietly, "that your courage is real, that you are stronger than you ever imagined." Lyra sank to the stone floor, trembling, tears mixing with rain. I did not know I could," she whispered. Cale knelt beside her, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. "And now you know, never forget it." The storm continued, but inside Lyra something had shifted. She felt a new sense of power, not of magic, but of self. She had faced darkness, and with Cale beside her, she had survived. For hours they sat in the tower, watching the lightning illuminate the cliffs below. Lyra realized that she had begun to trust Cale, not fully, but enough to feel safe. And Cale realized that in Lyra's quiet strength there was a bond he had never expected, one that could weather storms, shadows, and even curses. As the first light of dawn crept over Blackspire, the castle seemed quieter, almost peaceful. Yet both Cale and Lyra knew the danger was not gone. The sorceress would return, she would find another way. But for the first time, Lyra felt ready. She would not hide, she would not falter. Cale helped her to her feet. "Come," he said, "we must prepare. The castle is safe for now, but soon the storm will return. And when it does, you must be ready." Lyra nodded, determination in her eyes. She had endured so much already. She had faced fear, and now she had faced darkness itself. With Cale, she realized that she could do more than survive. She could fight, she could protect, she could stand strong. In the castle below, the townspeople began their day, unaware of the battle that had raged within the storm-soaked towers. They whispered about the little cook, but they did not know her courage, her growing bond with the Alpha King, or the dangers yet to come. Cale and Lyra moved through the corridors together, side by side. Their steps were silent but determined. Every glance, every gesture, every shared breath built a connection deeper than words. The bond was fragile, yes, but it was real, and it was growing. As they reached the castle gates, a shadow moved in the periphery of their vision. Kale stiffened, sensing the return of the sorceress. Her magic had left traces like footprints in the wind. She was not defeated. She was waiting, planning, watching. Lyra gripped Kale's hand, no longer trembling. "I am ready," she said softly, meeting his gaze. Kale's eyes softened, almost imperceptibly. "Then we face it together," he said, and as the wind howled and the first rays of sunlight broke through the storm clouds, both of them knew that their lives had changed forever. The castle was no longer just a home or a prison. It was a place of trials, of courage, and of trust. And soon, the true test would come, one that would challenge not just their strength, but the bond that had begun to grow between them. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered in Blackspire Castle. The halls were quiet, the wind still rattling the windows, and the smell of wet stone mixed with fire smoke from the hearths. The castle had survived the night, but Kale knew the danger was far from over. The sorceress was clever and patient, and she would not give up. Lyra moved through the corridors, her heart steady now. The courage she had discovered in the storm's chaos had changed her. She no longer felt small, hidden, or weak. She had faced darkness and survived, with Kale by her side. And she knew that together they could face more. Kale met her in the courtyard, his dark cloak fluttering in the morning breeze. His eyes were sharp, but there was a softness now, a quiet respect and trust in the girl who had proven herself. "Are you ready?" he asked. Lyra nodded. "I am. We can face her together." Kale led her through the castle gates, down the cliffside path into the forest below. The trees were thick, their branches twisted like ancient guardians, and mist curled along the ground. Somewhere ahead, hidden deep within the forest, the sorceress had prepared a trap, a place of shadows and magic meant to test them both. As they walked, Kale spoke quietly, teaching Lyra to focus not just on fear but on courage. "Remember," he said, "magic feeds on doubt. Courage and trust weaken it. Trust yourself and trust me. We are stronger together." Lyra listened carefully. She remembered the storm, the dark energy she had touched, the fear she had felt. But now it was different. The courage that had always been inside her had grown. She had survived bruises, whispers, and shadows. She would survive this too. The deeper they went into the forest, the darker it became. Even in daylight, shadows twisted unnaturally, and the air carried the faint scent of herbs and smoke. Kale's presence was steady, guiding her, and she felt a strange sense of calm. She could face the unknown because he faced it with her. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. Trees shook as if pushed by invisible hands, and a chilling wind cut through the forest. From the shadows the sorceress appeared, her silver hair glowing faintly, eyes sharp and calculating. Her staff pulsed with energy, twisting the air like smoke. "You cannot stop me," she hissed. "This girl belongs to darkness. She is weak and she will fall." Kale stepped forward, placing himself between Lyra and the sorceress. "She is stronger than you know," he said, "and I will not let you harm her." Lyra took a deep breath. Fear still fluttered in her chest, but she did not retreat. She remembered Kale's words, the trust he had given her, and the courage she had discovered. She raised her chin and faced the sorceress. "You will not win," she said firmly. The sorceress laughed, a sound like broken glass. She raised her staff, and dark energy surged forward, twisting like snakes in the air. Kale acted first, pushing Lyra behind him and blocking the attack. The energy slammed against him, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Lyra stumbled but regained her balance, focusing on the courage inside her. "Now, Lyra," Kale shouted. Lyra placed her hands forward, closing her eyes. She remembered every moment she had survived, every hardship she had endured. The dark energy reached toward her, but instead of fear, she sent courage, hope, and trust back into it. The energy wavered, faltered, and then dissolved into the mist. The sorceress stumbled, shock on her face. "Impossible!" she screamed. She resisted me. Kale's eyes were calm, unwavering. Strength comes from the heart, not from shadows, he said. Lyra's knees shook, but she did not fall. She had faced fear, darkness, and now magic itself, and she had survived. She looked at Kale, a mixture of gratitude and awe in her eyes. The sorceress, furious, raised her staff for one final attack, but Kale stepped beside Lyra, his hand on hers. Together, he said, we are stronger together. Their hands touched, and a glow surrounded them, a bond of trust and courage that no magic could break. The sorceress's power faltered, her energy dissipating into the wind. With a scream of frustration, she vanished, leaving only shadows behind. The forest was silent again, save for the rustle of leaves and the distant sound of the sea. Lyra's heart pounded, her hands trembling. But this trembling was different. It was not fear. It was the pulse of life, of courage, of strength discovered. Kale looked at her, a rare softness in his eyes. You did it, he said. You were brave, stronger than I even imagined. Lyra shook her head slightly, laughing softly through tears. I could not have done it without you, she said. Kale knelt beside her. No, he said gently. You did it. I only guided you. Your strength, it is yours, all yours. They returned to the castle, walking through the forest together. The path seemed less frightening now, the shadows less threatening. Lyra had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. When they reached Blackspire Castle, the sun was breaking through the clouds. Light poured across the cliffs, painting the castle walls gold and silver. The storm had passed, but the memory of it lingered, a reminder that darkness could return, but also that they could survive it together. In the great hall, the townspeople and castle servants whispered in awe. They had heard of the battle in the forest, of the sorceress's magic, and of the courage of the little cook and the Alpha King. Many had feared her, but now they saw her in a new light. Lyra, once timid and hidden, was now recognized for her bravery and strength. Kale stood beside her, his hand brushing hers lightly, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they shared. He no longer needed to protect her from every danger. She had proven herself. She had grown, transformed, and he had witnessed it. The sorceress would not return for a while, but both Kale and Lyra knew she would come again. Danger was part of their world. Shadows were part of life. But now they faced it together, stronger, braver, and bound by trust and courage. Lyra looked up at the cliffs, at the rising sun, and felt a sense of peace she had never known. She had survived fear, endured darkness, and discovered her strength. And for the first time, she felt she belonged, not just in the castle, but in the world, beside someone who saw her, understood her, and respected her courage. Kale watched her silently. He had ruled Blackspire Castle for years, feared and respected by all, but never had he felt such pride as he did now. Not for power, not for victory, but for the courage of the girl beside him. She had survived, she had grown, and she had earned her place, not as a servant, but as someone who could stand equally by his side. The town below would talk, of course. They would whisper about the little cook who had survived magic and storms, about the Alpha King who had noticed her, and about the bond that now tied them together. But Kale and Lyra no longer worried about whispers. They had faced darkness together, and they had won. As the day drew on, they walked to the balcony overlooking the cliffs and the sea. The wind was calm, the waves gentle, and the castle seemed almost peaceful, though both of them knew that challenges would come again. But they also knew this. Together, they could face anything. Kale turned to Lyra, his eyes soft but steady. This kingdom is ours now, he said quietly. Together, we are stronger than any shadow, any storm, or any curse. Lyra smiled, her heart full. Together, she echoed. And as the sun rose higher over Blackspire, casting light across the castle and cliffs, a new chapter began. One of courage, trust, and strength. One where darkness would come, yes, but where hearts united could overcome even the deepest shadows. The storm had passed, but its lessons remained. Lyra had learned courage. Kale had learned trust. And together they had discovered something more powerful than magic or fear, the strength of a bond forged in trust, bravery, and the will to survive. The castle was quiet again, but the wind carried a promise, a whisper of new challenges, new adventures, and the knowledge that together they could face the world, no matter what shadows lay ahead. The Alpha King and the little cook, once separated by fear and silence, now stood side by side, ready for whatever the future would bring. And the town, the castle, and the world would never forget that bond, for it had been forged in courage, trust, and the quiet power of hearts unbroken by fear. The story of the little cook and the Alpha King had reached its first victory, but the legend was only beginning.